The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Villani system, and immediately every sensor screamed warnings. Scout Captain Lim Minho stared at his display in horror. "Admiral, you need to see this." On the main screen of the Indomitable, what had once been a thriving star system now looked like a vision from hell. 3 planets hung in space like rotting fruit, their surfaces covered in a black substance that moved and pulsed. Where cities had once gleamed, only darkness remained. "My God," whispered Captain Lee Bora. "What happened here?" Dr. Kim So-jin ran her scanners over the nearest planet. "I'm reading massive biological activity, but it's all wrong. It's like the entire planet has been turned into a single living organism." Commander Park Tae-min worked frantically at his communications station. "I'm trying to reach the Villani, but there's too much interference. Wait. I'm getting something from the 4th planet. It's weak, but it's definitely their language." "On screen," Han Wu ordered. The transmission was filled with static, but through the noise came a familiar musical voice. The Villani were still alive somewhere in this nightmare. Park's translation appeared on the screen. "Hidden fleet. Last survivors. 47,000 remaining. Do not approach. The Devourers sense all technology." 47,000 from a population of billions, Dr. Kim said quietly. "This is genocide on a scale we've never imagined." Suddenly, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Sergeant An Soo-jin, monitoring the Marine combat stations, reported urgently, "Admiral, we have contacts approaching. Multiple ships, unknown configuration." The main display shifted to show space around the fleet. Rising from the black surface of the nearest planet came ships unlike anything in human databases. They were vast organic things that seemed to grow rather than being built, twisted metal and living tissue combined in patterns that hurt to look at. "How many?" Han Wu asked. 60. "No, 80. Admiral, they keep coming. I count over 200 now." Tech specialist Bae Dong-wook analyzed the enemy vessels with his instruments. "Sir, these ships don't match any known technology. They're part machine, part creature. The power sources are biological, but the weapons are definitely artificial." "Size comparison?" "Most are smaller than our destroyers, but there are larger ones. Admiral, the biggest one is half the size of this ship, and it's moving toward us." Han Wu stood at the center of his bridge, watching death approach his fleet. 200 ships against 200 ships should have been an even fight, but nothing about this felt even. These Void Devourer vessels moved wrong, like predators that had never met real resistance. "All ships, battle stations," Han Wu commanded. "Prepare for engagement." Throughout the fleet, human warriors prepared for war. In the fighter bays, Lieutenant Nam Ji-woo strapped herself into her cockpit. Her squadron had trained for every possible enemy, but nothing had prepared them for this. The Void Devourer ships moved like living things, twisting and flowing through space. "Gold Squadron, this is Gold Leader," she transmitted to her pilots. "Stay in formation. These things are new, but they still follow physics. Hit them hard and fast." On the surface teams, Colonel Choi Dae-ho watched the enemy approach through his battle display. "Marines, remember your training. We don't know what these things can do, but we know what we can do. When the time comes, we kill them all." The first engagement began when a group of smaller Void Devourer ships broke away from the main force and rushed toward the human fleet. They moved incredibly fast, like living bullets fired from the darkness. "All weapons, open fire," Han Wu ordered. Space erupted in light as human weapons spoke. Energy beams and kinetic rounds filled the void between the fleets. The first Void Devourer ship hit by human fire simply vanished in a ball of expanding gas and debris. "Direct hit," reported Bo-ra. "Target destroyed." But the celebration was short-lived. The remaining Void Devourer ships didn't slow down or change course. They kept coming, even as human weapons tore through their ranks. It was like they felt no fear, no concern for their own survival. "They're not trying to avoid our fire," observed Scout Captain Lim. "It's like they don't understand the concept of self-preservation." The first Void Devourer ship reached the human fleet and rammed directly into the destroyer Righteous Fury. But, instead of simply crashing, the alien vessel seemed to melt into the human ship's hull. Within minutes, the destroyer's communications went dead. "What just happened?" Han Wu demanded. Tech specialist Bae studied his readings. "Admiral, the enemy ship didn't just ram the Fury, it's consuming it. The alien vessel is breaking down our ship's structure and absorbing it." Dr. Kim's voice was tight with horror. "It's feeding, just like they did to the Villani planets." More Void Devourer ships reached the human formation. Each one that made contact began the same horrifying process, consuming human vessels and growing larger. But the humans fought back in ways the aliens had never experienced. Captain Shin Jae-hyun led a boarding party onto one of the partially consumed ships. His special forces teams found corridors filled with black organic matter that pulsed like a giant heart, but they also found something unexpected. The alien substance recoiled from human weapons fire. "Admiral," he reported over the communications, "these things can be hurt. Our weapons are causing real damage to their biological components." Engineer Chief Yoon Hee-jin had been monitoring the battle from her engineering station. "Sir, I'm detecting a weakness. When we hit their ships with explosive rounds, the biological parts separate from the mechanical parts. If we can disrupt their integration, do it," Han Wu ordered. All ships switched to explosive rounds. Target the junction points between organic and mechanical components. The tide of battle began to shift. Human weapons designed for maximum destruction proved devastatingly effective against enemies evolved for easy feeding. Void Devourer ships that had seemed unstoppable began breaking apart under focused fire. Lieutenant Nam Ji-woo led her fighter squadron through the enemy formation, targeting the larger ships with precision strikes. "These things are tough, but they're not invincible," she reported. "They don't seem to understand evasive maneuvers. That's because they've never needed them," Dr. Kim realized. "Every species they've faced either ran or surrendered. They've never fought anyone who fights back." The largest Void Devourer vessel finally reached the human fleet. It was a massive thing, covered in what looked like eyes and mouths. Organic weapons emerged from its surface, firing streams of acid and biotoxins at the human ships. "All batteries, focus fire on the lead ship," Han Wu commanded. The Indomitable and 5 other heavy cruisers concentrated their firepower on the alien flagship. Explosive rounds tore into its organic armor while energy beams cut through its mechanical systems. But the creature was enormous and it kept coming. "Admiral," reported Sergeant An from the Marine stations, "that thing is heading straight for us." Impact in 30 seconds. Han Wu made a decision that would define the entire battle. "All ships ramming speed. We're going to show these things what real predators look like." The human fleet surged forward, not away from the massive Void Devourer ship, but directly toward it. This was something completely outside the aliens' experience. Their prey was attacking them. The collision was spectacular. The Indomitable smashed into the alien flagship at full speed. But instead of trying to consume the human ship, both vessels began tearing each other apart. Human Marines boarded through the breach, fighting hand-to-hand with alien creatures in the corridors of the enemy ship. Colonel Choi led the charge through twisting organic passages that tried to close around his men. "Keep moving. Don't let them adapt to our weapons." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it was finally over, the space around the Volani system was filled with debris from both fleets. The humans had lost 30 ships and 5,000 people, but they had destroyed every Void Devourer vessel in the system. More importantly, they had proven something that would change the course of the war. The unstoppable Devourers could be stopped. As rescue teams searched for survivors, a weak transmission reached the human fleet. It was from the hidden Volani refugees, and the message was simple. "Thank you for answering our call. No one has ever come to help us before." Admiral Han Wu stood on his damaged bridge looking out at the stars. They had won the first battle, but he knew this was just the beginning. Somewhere in the galaxy more Void Devourers waited, but now they would face an enemy they had never encountered before. Humans who refused to be prey. Admiral Han Wu stood on the bridge of the massive warship Indomitable, watching stars drift past the viewscreen. His weathered face showed the scars of many battles. Behind him, dozens of crew members worked at their stations, monitoring space for any threats. The human fleet had been patrolling the outer rim for 3 months now. 50 warships spread across this sector, keeping watch over the darkness between stars. Most alien species avoided this area. They called humans Deathworlders and feared them. Han Wu understood why. Earth had made humans into something different, stronger, more dangerous. "Admiral," called Captain Lee Bora from her tactical station, "we're picking up something strange." Han Wu turned toward her. Bora was young but brilliant. She could read space battles like others read books. "What kind of strange?" "It's a distress signal, but not from any species in our database." Bora's fingers danced over her controls. "The language is completely unknown, But the emotion, she paused. Sir, they sound terrified. Commander Park Taman hurried over from the communications array. His specialty was alien languages, and he looked puzzled. Admiral, I've never heard anything like this. The signal is fragmented, but I'm picking up words that might mean help and death and something else. Something that translates roughly to Eaters of Worlds. Han Wu felt a chill run down his spine. In his 30 years of military service, he had learned to trust his instincts. This felt important. Put it on speakers. The bridge filled with alien voices. They spoke in high musical tones, but underneath the beauty was pure terror. Even without understanding the words, everyone could hear the desperation. These beings were begging for help. Can you clean it up? Han Wu asked. Park Taman worked for several minutes, filtering out static and background noise. Slowly, the message became clearer. I'm getting coordinates, Admiral. They're coming from the Villani system, 3 sectors away. Dr. Kim So-jin entered the bridge, carrying her medical scanner. She was the ship's chief doctor and knew more about alien biology than anyone in the fleet. Admiral, I heard the signal from sickbay. These aliens, their stress hormones are off the charts. Whatever's happening to them, it's worse than anything in our medical databases. Han Wu studied the data streaming across the screens. The signal repeated every few minutes, growing weaker each time. Park, what else can you make out? The communications officer put on his headphones and listened carefully. They call themselves the Villani Confederation. They're traders, peaceful. They mentioned something called the Void Devourers. Admiral, they're saying entire star systems are being consumed. Consumed how? Bora asked, pulling up star charts on her screen. That's the terrifying part, Park replied. Not just conquered. Eaten. They describe worlds being stripped of all life, their people harvested like crops. The bridge fell silent. Han Wu had fought in many wars, but this sounded like something from nightmares. Any response from the Galactic Council? Park checked his long-range communications. The Council received the signal 6 hours ago. They've classified it as unverified primitive, fears, and ordered all member species to ignore it. Typical, muttered Bora. The Council only acts when it's too late. Han Wu walked to the main view screen and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, an entire species was crying for help, and the galaxy was turning its back on them. This was exactly why humans remained independent of the Council. They were too slow, too careful, too willing to sacrifice others to protect themselves. Admiral, Dr. Kim said quietly, if these void devourers are real and if they're as dangerous as the Villani claim, they might not stop with one species. You think they'll spread? Han Wu asked. Predators always do. If something is consuming entire civilizations, it won't be satisfied with just one. Han Wu thought about Earth. His home planet had taught humans hard lessons about survival. When faced with predators, you had 2 choices: fight or become food. The Villani were clearly not fighters. Someone had to help them. Bora, how long would it take to reach the Villani system? The tactical officer ran quick calculations. With the full fleet? 48 hours at maximum speed. And if we took just the fast attack ships? 36 hours, but we'd have limited firepower. Han Wu considered his options. The smart military choice was to wait, gather more information, make sure this wasn't some kind of trap. But the Villani signal was growing weaker with each transmission. Whatever was happening to them was happening fast. Admiral, Park interrupted. We're receiving a new transmission. This one's different. The alien voice that came through the speakers was barely a whisper. The words were broken, filled with static, but the meaning was clear. The Villani were making their final broadcast. Their last world was under attack. They had maybe hours left. Han Wu looked around his bridge. These men and women had followed him through impossible battles. They trusted his judgment. More importantly, they shared his values. Humans didn't abandon people who needed help. Communication sent a message to all fleet commanders. Emergency assembly in 1 hour. Sir, Bora said carefully. The Council explicitly ordered non-interference. Han Wu turned to face his crew. The Council isn't here, we are. And I didn't become a soldier to watch innocent people die while politicians debate. Dr. Kim stepped forward. Admiral, we don't know anything about these void devourers. We could be flying into something we can't handle. Maybe, Han Wu admitted. But the Villani can't handle it either. The difference is we're Deathworlders. We've been dealing with things that want to kill us our entire lives. He walked back to his command chair and sat down. Park, record a message for transmission to Earth Command. Tell them we're responding to an alien distress call. Full details to follow. And if they order us to return? Bora asked. Hanwoo smiled grimly. By the time that message reaches Earth and a reply comes back, this will all be over. One way or another, the bridge crew exchanged glances. They all knew what this meant. They were about to disobey direct orders from the Galactic Council and possibly their own government. They were going to war against an unknown enemy to save an alien species they'd never met. All hands prepare for emergency fleet assembly, Hanwoo announced over the ship's communication system. We have people to save. As the Indomitable changed course toward the assembly point, Hanwoo thought about the choice he'd just made. History would judge whether it was wise. But he knew it was right. Sometimes doing the right thing was more important than following orders. The Volani had called for help. Humans were going to answer. The human fleet gathered in empty space like a swarm of metal sharks. 200 warships floated in perfect formation, their weapons powered down but ready. Admiral Hanwoo had called in every available ship from 3 sectors. This was the largest human military force ever assembled. Colonel Choi Dae-ho stood in the main hangar bay of the Indomitable, watching his Marines prepare for war. 50,000 soldiers moved with practiced efficiency, checking weapons and armor. These weren't regular troops. They were specialists, trained for the worst environments in the galaxy. Earth had taught humans to fight in places where nothing should survive. How are they looking? Asked Lieutenant Nam Ji-woo as she joined the colonel. The young pilot commanded the fleet's starfighter squadrons. Her small frame hid reflexes that made her deadly in space combat. Ready for anything, Choi replied, though we still don't know what anything might be. Across the hangar, Engineer Chief Yoon Hye-jin supervised the loading of heavy weapons. Her teams had worked for 20 hours straight, modifying human equipment for unknown threats. If these void devourers are as dangerous as the reports suggest, we'll need every advantage we can get. On the bridge, Captain Lee Bo-ra studied intelligence data flowing in from across the galaxy. What she found was disturbing. The Galactic Council's databases contained no references to void devourers, but there were gaps. Entire civilizations that had simply vanished from history with no explanation. Admiral, she called to Hanwoo, I think I found something. Look at these historical records. Hanwoo joined her at the tactical display. Bora had overlaid a star map with disappearance dates. Over the past 1,000 years, we've lost contact with 47 different species. The official records blame natural disasters, wars, or voluntary isolation. But you don't believe that? The pattern is wrong, Bora explained. These disappearances happen in clusters, then nothing for decades or centuries. It's like something wakes up, feeds, then goes back to sleep. Dr. Kim So-jin entered the bridge carrying data tablets. I've been analyzing the biological information from the Volani transmissions. Admiral, if their descriptions are accurate, these void devourers aren't just conquering species. They're harvesting them. Explain. Dr. Kim activated a holographic display showing alien biological data. The Volani describe a process where living beings are broken down to their basic genetic components, then rebuilt into something else. It's like they're not just killing people, they're absorbing them. Hanwoo felt his stomach turn. How is that possible? Unknown. But if it's true, we're not facing a normal enemy. We're dealing with something that views entire species as food sources. Commander Park Tae-min approached the group, looking grim. Admiral, we just received another transmission from the Volani system. It's much weaker than before. Put it through. The alien voice that filled the bridge was barely recognizable. The musical quality was gone, replaced by harsh static and desperate whispers. Park had managed to translate the basic meaning. Last fortress under siege. Estimated 72 hours until complete harvest. Any who receive this message do not come. Save yourselves. The bridge fell silent. Even across the vast differences between species, the courage in that message was clear. The Volani were facing extinction, but they were warning others to stay away. 72 hours, Hanwoo said quietly. How long until we reach them? 46 hours at maximum speed, Bora replied. Then we'll be cutting it close. Hanwoo turned to his communications officer. Park, send a message to all ship commanders. Full fleet briefing in 1 hour. The main briefing room of the Indomitable was packed with human officers. Ship captains, marine commanders, squadron leaders, and technical specialists filled every seat. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. Hanwoo stood at the front with the main display showing what little they knew about the void devourers. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to face something new. Our enemy doesn't follow normal military doctrine. They don't want territory or resources in any way we understand. They want to consume entire species. Captain Shin Jae-hyun, the fleet's special operations commander, raised his hand. Admiral, what kind of numbers are we looking at? Unknown. The Villani reports suggest massive swarms, but they don't give exact counts. What we do know is that these void devourers have never faced serious resistance. Every species they've encountered has either fled or been consumed. What makes us different? Asked another officer. Han Wu smiled grimly. We're from Earth. We're used to everything trying to kill us. The room filled with dark laughter. Every human in the fleet understood what that meant. Earth was a death world where survival meant becoming the most dangerous thing around. Other species had evolved on safe planets with predictable environments. Humans had evolved in hell. Engineer Chief Yoon Hye-jin stood up. Admiral, I've been working on modifications to our weapons systems. If these creatures are partly biological, our standard energy weapons might not be as effective. I recommend switching to kinetic rounds and explosive charges. How much time do you need? My teams can modify the main batteries in 18 hours. Small arms will take longer. Do it. Han Wu looked around the room. Any other concerns? Dr. Kim So-jin raised her hand. Admiral, I think we need to consider biological warfare. If these void devourers are harvesting genetic material, they might be vulnerable to targeted diseases or toxins. Can you develop something in time? I'll need samples of their biology. But yes, it's possible. Han Wu nodded. Make it happen. What else? The questions continued for another hour. Logistics, communications, evacuation procedures for the Villani survivors. Every detail had to be planned. They were flying into the unknown with only fragments of information and desperate alien transmissions to guide them. As the briefing ended, Han Wu remained behind with his senior staff. The room felt different with fewer people, more intimate. These were the officers who would make the critical decisions in the coming battle. Are we making a mistake? Asked Bora quietly. Maybe, Han Wu admitted. But the alternative is letting an entire species die while we gather more information. How many other species have made that choice? How many stood by and watched while the void devourers fed? Colonel Choi spoke up. Admiral, my Marines are ready. Whatever these things are, we'll find a way to kill them. That's the human way, agreed Lieutenant Nam. We don't run from predators. We hunt them. Engineer Chief Yoon was already making notes on her data tablet. I'll have preliminary weapon modifications ready in 12 hours. Full conversion in 18. Dr. Kim looked thoughtful. I keep thinking about what the Villani said. Eaters of worlds. What if that's literally true? What if these void devourers have been feeding on civilizations for so long that they've forgotten how to fight? You think they're vulnerable? Han Wu asked. I think they've never met anyone crazy enough to fight back. Every other species runs or hides. But humans? She smiled. Humans see a monster and start planning how to kill it. Han Wu stood up. All right, people. We have 46 hours to turn this fleet into something that can stop an ancient evil. Get to work. As his officers filed out, Han Wu remained alone in the briefing room. Through the viewport, he could see the rest of the human fleet. 200 ships filled with 50,000 people who trusted his judgment. They were about to risk everything for aliens they'd never met. But that was what made humans different. They didn't calculate odds when people needed help. They just acted. The void devourers had awakened to find something new in the galaxy, something that didn't run from monsters, something that hunted them back. They had won another victory against impossible odds. Admiral Han Wu stood in the communications center of the orbital station they had built above the fourth Villani planet. For 2 months, his fleet had been receiving reports that changed everything they thought they knew about the war. The void devourers weren't just retreating, they were running. Another confirmed sighting, reported Captain Shin Jae-hyun as he entered the command center. Long-range scouts found a void devourer fleet abandoning the Kepler system. 36 ships all heading toward deep space. Dr. Ryu Mi-young, the fleet's xenopsychologist, looked up from her analysis station. Admiral, this behavior doesn't match anything in their historical pattern. For the first time in recorded history, they're abandoning feeding grounds without completing the harvest. Fear, said Dr. Kim So-jin simply. We've introduced something into their experience that they can't process. The possibility of being hunted. Commander Hwang Tae-jin, who managed fleet logistics, approached with a data tablet. Admiral, we're receiving requests for assistance from 17 different star systems. Word about our victories has spread throughout this sector. Han Wu studied the tactical display showing reported Void Devourer movements. The pattern was clear. They were avoiding any system where human ships had been reported. They're learning to fear us. More than that, Dr. Ryu added. I've been analyzing intercepted communications from their hive mind. The concept of retreat doesn't exist in their language. They're having to create new words just to describe what's happening to them. Lieutenant Nam Jiwoo entered the command center still wearing her flight suit. Her squadron had just returned from a deep patrol. Admiral, we found something interesting in the Rigel system. The Void Devourers left behind a partially consumed planet, but they also left behind equipment. What kind of equipment? Breeding facilities. Massive organic structures that were obviously important to them, but they abandoned everything when they detected our approach. Engineer Chief Yoon Hye-jin looked thoughtful. Admiral, if they're abandoning breeding facilities, they're not just retreating tactically. They're abandoning their expansion strategy entirely. Han Wu walked to the main view screen looking out at the stars. They've never faced an enemy that hunts them back. Every other species either runs or gets consumed. But we follow them. Captain Shin stepped forward. Admiral, my Special Forces teams have been tracking Void Devourer movements across 3 sectors. They're consolidating their forces, pulling back towards something. I think they're gathering at their origin point. Their homeworld? More than that. Intelligence suggests it's where they first evolved, where their primary breeding populations are located. If we could find it, Dr. Kim interrupted. Admiral, if we're talking about attacking their homeworld, we need to understand what we're facing. My analysis of captured biotechnology suggests their entire species might be interconnected. Destroy the source and you might destroy them all. Is that possible? Theoretically. But it would require penetrating to the core of whatever world or structure serves as their breeding center. The defenses would be beyond anything we've faced. Commander Oh Jung-woo entered the command center carrying urgent communications. Admiral, we're receiving priority transmissions from Earth Command and the Galactic Council. What do they want? Earth Command is ordering us to return immediately. They're concerned about the political implications of our actions. The Galactic Council has declared our operations destabilizing to galactic peace. Han Wu almost laughed. Peace? We're the only thing standing between the galaxy and a species that eats entire civilizations. There's more, Oh continued. Some Council species are claiming that our aggressive tactics might provoke the Void Devourers into larger-scale attacks. Let me understand this, Dr. Ryu said. They're afraid that fighting back might make the monsters angry? That's exactly what they're saying. Han Wu looked around the command center at his officers. These men and women had followed him through impossible battles, saving an entire species and proving that the unstoppable could be stopped. Now politicians wanted them to abandon the fight. Thoughts? He asked his staff. Captain Shin was the first to speak. Admiral, we've got the Void Devourers on the run for the first time in galactic history. Stopping now would be insane. Lieutenant Nam nodded. My pilots have seen what these things do to inhabited worlds. We can't just walk away. Engineer Chief Yoon was more practical. Admiral, the Council can't force us to stop. We're operating under human authority in unaligned space. Dr. Kim looked concerned. But if we continue, we'll be completely on our own. No support, no reinforcements, no backup if things go wrong. We've been on our own since the beginning, Han Wu replied. The only difference is now it's official. Commander Huang checked his logistics reports. Admiral, we have enough supplies for 6 more months of operations. After that, we'll need to return to human space or find alternative sources. 6 months should be enough, Han Wu decided. Oh, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we're pursuing a fleeing enemy force and will return when the threat is neutralized. And the Galactic Council? Tell them nothing. We're not council members and we don't answer to them. Over the following weeks, the human fleet began the largest pursuit operation in military history. Using captured Void Devourer technology, they tracked the fleeing aliens across dozens of star systems. Each time they caught up with enemy forces, the same pattern repeated. Brief, violent battles that ended with Void Devourer retreat. But the humans were learning valuable information with each engagement. Dr. Ryu's psychological analysis revealed that the alien hive mind was experiencing something like panic. Entire sections of their species were shutting down, unable to process the concept of being prey. It's like their whole civilization is having a nervous breakdown, she reported. They're so used to being apex predators that they can't adapt to being hunted. Captain Shin's reconnaissance teams had traced the Void Devourer retreat to its source, a massive structure in deep space, far from any star system. It wasn't a planet. It was something artificial, built on a scale that dwarfed anything humans had ever seen. It's roughly the size of a small moon, Shin reported, but it's clearly artificial. The entire structure appears to be organic, covered in what look like breeding chambers and processing facilities. How many Void Devourers are we talking about? Han Wu asked. Millions, maybe billions. Admiral, this isn't just their homeworld. It's their entire species concentrated in one location. Dr. Kim studied the long-range sensor data. If this structure is their breeding center, destroying it could end the Void Devourer threat permanently. It could also be the most heavily defended location in the galaxy, warned Commander Huang. Han Wu assembled his senior staff for what might be their final planning session. The room was quiet as everyone understood the magnitude of what they were considering. We have a choice, he began. We can return to human space, report our findings, and let someone else deal with this threat. Or we can finish what we started. What are the odds of success? Asked Dr. Kim, unknown. We'd be attacking something the size of a moon, defended by the entire Void Devourer species. Sounds like fun, said Lieutenant Nam, earning grim smiles from the others. Captain Shin leaned forward. Admiral, my analysis suggests their concentration in one location might actually work in our favor. They've never needed to defend a fixed position before. All their tactics are based on mobility and consumption. Engineer Chief Yoon had been studying the technical challenges. I can modify our weapons for large-scale biological warfare. If we can penetrate their defenses and reach the breeding chambers, we could end this war permanently, Han Wu finished. The decision was unanimous. The human fleet would make one final assault, targeting the heart of the Void Devourer species. It was a mission that violated every principle of military caution, ignored direct orders from Earth, and defied the explicit wishes of the Galactic Council. It was also the right thing to do. As the fleet prepared for its final battle, Han Wu thought about the path that had brought them here. It had started with a simple distress call and a decision to help strangers. Now it would end with humans attempting something no species had ever tried, hunting the hunters to extinction. All ships, he announced over the fleet communications, prepare for final assault. We're going to end this threat once and for all. In the distance, the Void Devourer home structure waited, unaware that death was coming for them. For the first time in their species' existence, they were about to discover what it felt like to be prey. 3 weeks after the first battle, the human fleet had transformed the Volani system into a fortress. Admiral Han Wu stood in the command center they had built on the 4th planet, watching his forces hunt the remaining Void Devourers with deadly efficiency. Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported Major Seo Kyung-min from her hunter-killer team. Single enemy vessel, attempting to harvest the mining station on Asteroid 7. Intercept and destroy, Han Wu replied calmly. On the tactical display, he watched as Pilot Officer Kang Han-nul led her squadron toward the target. The young pilot had become the fleet's top ace with 43 confirmed kills. Her fighters moved like wolves hunting prey, surrounding the Void Devourer ship before it could react. Target eliminated, came Kang's report. No survivors, no escape pods. These things really don't understand retreat. Commander Oh Young-woo, the fleet's intelligence officer, looked up from his analysis station. Admiral, that makes 67 individual Void Devourer ships destroyed since the main battle. But they keep coming in small groups. It's like they can't process what happened to their main force. Dr. Kim So-jin joined them at the command table. Her medical teams had been studying captured Void Devourer technology for weeks. I think I understand why they keep attacking in small numbers. Their hive mind can't adapt to the concept of defeat. They literally don't have the mental framework for retreat. Explain, Han Wu said. Think about it from their perspective, Dr. Kim continued. For thousands of years, maybe longer, they've had the same experience. They arrive, they consume, they move on. Every species either runs or gets eaten. They've never needed to develop strategies for fighting back. Engineer Chief Yoon Hyejin approached the group, carrying a strange device that seemed to pulse with organic light. Admiral, my teams have been reverse engineering their biotechnology. These Void Devourers don't just use living ships. They are living ships, The creatures and the technology are completely integrated. Can we use that against them? Asked Hanwoo. Already working on it, Yoon smiled. If we can disrupt their biological systems, their technology fails completely. I've developed a new type of weapon that targets their genetic structure. Across the system, human forces had established a network of sensor stations and patrol routes. Every human ship carried samples of Void Devourer biotechnology, allowing Dr. Kim's teams to develop increasingly effective weapons. But more importantly, they were learning how the enemy thought. Major Seo had become the fleet's expert on boarding actions. Her teams regularly captured Void Devourer vessels, fighting the aliens in their own ships. Admiral, these creatures are incredible fighters one-on-one, but they can't handle group tactics. They don't seem to understand cooperation in combat. How so? Hanwoo asked. When we board their ships, each alien fights alone. They don't coordinate, don't support each other, don't even communicate during battle. It's like they've never learned teamwork. Lieutenant Nam Ji-woo nodded in agreement. Same thing in space combat. Their ships don't work together. Each one attacks independently, even when that puts them at a disadvantage. Commander O had been studying patterns in the Void Devourer attacks. Admiral, I think there's something else we need to consider. These small groups that keep attacking us? They're not random. They're probing attacks, testing our defenses. For what? I think they're gathering information for something bigger. Each attack is slightly different, like they're learning from our responses. Hanwoo felt a chill. If the Void Devourers were adapting even slowly, that changed everything. How much bigger? Unknown. But based on the energy signatures we detected before the first battle, I think we've only faced a small portion of their total force. The discussion was interrupted by urgent alarms. Scout Captain Lim Min-ho's voice came over the communication system. Admiral, we have multiple contacts entering the system. Large signatures much bigger than anything we've seen before. Hanwoo and his staff rushed to the main tactical display. The sensors showed massive shapes emerging from hyperspace at the edge of the system. These weren't the organic ships they had been fighting. These were something new. Size analysis, Hanwoo demanded. The smallest ones are twice the size of our heavy cruisers, reported the sensor technician. The largest? Admiral, it's bigger than a space station, and there are dozens of them. Through the viewports, they could see lights moving in the darkness. The new Void Devourer ships were covered in bioluminescent patterns that pulsed like giant heartbeats. They moved slowly but with obvious purpose, spreading out to surround the system. They've brought reinforcements, Dr. Kim said quietly. A lot of reinforcements. Pilot Officer Kang's voice came over the communications. Admiral, requesting permission to conduct reconnaissance. My squadron can get close enough to gather tactical data. Negative, Hanwoo replied immediately. We don't know what those ships are capable of. All forces maintain defensive positions, but the decision was taken out of his hands. The largest Void Devourer ship suddenly accelerated, moving much faster than something that size should be able to move. It headed directly for the human defensive line. All batteries, prepare to engage, Hanwoo ordered. Let's see how tough these big ones are. The human fleet opened fire as soon as the massive ship came within range. Energy beams and kinetic rounds hammered into its organic armor, but the attacks seemed to have little effect. The creature's surface absorbed the weapon's fire like a sponge absorbing water. Switching to bio-disruptor rounds, reported Engineer Chief Yoon. The new weapons had a more noticeable effect. Where the bio-disruptor rounds hit, the alien ship's surface began to break down, revealing mechanical structures underneath. But the ship was so large that even significant damage barely slowed it down. Admiral, called Major Seo, that thing is heading for the refugee camps. If it reaches the Villani survivors, Hanwoo made another decision that would define human military doctrine. All ships close formation. We're going to take that thing down the hard way, sir, asked Commander O. We're going to board it. The bridge fell silent. Boarding a ship that size would require thousands of Marines fighting through hostile territory with no clear objectives. It was exactly the kind of impossible mission that humans specialized in. Colonel Choi, Hanwoo called over the communications, prepare your Marines for large-scale boarding action. We're going inside that thing. Understood, Admiral. My people are ready. Engineer Chief Yoon had been analyzing the massive ship's structure. Admiral, I'm detecting multiple weak points where the biological and mechanical systems interface. If we can place charges at those locations, We can kill it from the inside, Hanwoo finished. Do it. What followed was the largest boarding action in human military history. Transport ships carrying 5,000 Marines launched from the human fleet, racing toward the massive Void Devourer vessel. Lieutenant Nam's fighters provided cover, keeping smaller enemy ships away from the transports. The Marines cut their way into the alien ship through dozens of entry points. Inside, they found corridors the size of city streets, filled with organic machinery that tried to consume them. But human soldiers had trained for hostile environments their entire lives. Earth had taught them to fight in places where everything was trying to kill them. Colonel Choi led the main assault force toward the ship's central core. His Marines moved in tight formations, supporting each other with covering fire and coordinated tactics. The Void Devourers they encountered were individually powerful, but they couldn't handle human teamwork. Charges placed at Section 7, reported one team. Section 12 secured, called another. Section 23, we're taking heavy casualties here. Need support. Major CO's Special Forces teams penetrated deepest into the ship, reaching areas where the distinction between creature and machine completely disappeared. The walls pulsed like living tissue, but the floors were made of unknown metal that hummed with energy. Admiral, CO reported, I think we found something important. There's a chamber at the center of this thing that looks like a brain, a really big brain. Can you destroy it? Working on it now. The battle inside the massive ship raged for 8 hours. Human Marines fought through organic corridors that tried to digest them, past weapons that fired acid and biotoxins. But they kept advancing, placing charges and destroying critical systems. When Colonel Choi's demolition teams finally triggered their explosives, the effect was immediate. The massive Void Devourer ship convulsed like a wounded animal, its bioluminescent patterns flickering and dying. Slowly, it began to break apart. All teams, emergency extraction, Hanwoo ordered. The surviving Marines raced back to their extraction points as the alien ship collapsed around them. Not all of them made it out. But those who did brought with them something invaluable, proof that even the largest Void Devourer vessels could be destroyed. As the debris from the massive ship scattered across space, the remaining Void Devourer forces did something unprecedented. They retreated. For the first time in their species' history, they withdrew from a battle. Admiral, reported Commander O, the enemy fleet is leaving the system. All contacts moving away at maximum speed. Hanwoo stood on his bridge watching the alien ships flee into the darkness. Around him, his crew cheered and celebrated.